We have four matches. They have four matches. They have won in the MLS League. They're very strong locally. We knew that they were a great opponent. And here, the full success is for our players. They were able to control the pressure to show superiority throughout the match. They have a very characteristical way of playing. They have a great head coach with an amazing trajectory in career, and we knew very well what was going to happen in the game, particularly about structures. We had a lot of analyses, but the key were the players. The truth of the matter is that our players played great today. They understood the plan on the match to perfection. They had a lot of individual accomplishments where we saw that they were able to succeed and actually overcome different kinds of situations. We had significant possession of the ball, which we knew was going to be clear for such a physical and tactical team. We are a team that plays a lot with the position. We like to possess the ball and control the ball. And we had an offensive clarity. Perhaps in previous games in our local tournaments, we had a lot of volume, a lot of structure, a lot of game, but we had still managed to get that final punch. Here, we were able to see that, and it was significant between this alignment, this roster that we were able to define very well. And we had a 3 goal difference in favor of us, which was great. Well, we knew that for the opponent's team that they were very great. They weren't going to change that 4-3-2-2. They were going to be cornering on our midfielders, our center backs. We had an advantage for against their line of four. We didn't know if their pivots were going to sink or they were going to come up to our pivot, but we were able to actually get all these positions in line with the opponents, and they had an advantage of 2-for-1, 2-for-1. For example, Ricardinho was great there. So that was the key of the game. We had trained for that. We knew that the change of orientation at Marley, which were spectacular as well. But most definitely, we had the same advantage in other matches, and we couldn't translate that into goals. But today, there was a lot of value on the team, on the individual players. I was really glad with the entrance of Pisa, Rayo, Oscar as well. And Oscar, he suffered quite a lesion. And we thought that it was great. Actually, we wanted to give him minutes, and he ended up competing really well. And I think the whole squad did very well. We were looking to get at this League's Cup more than what happens in the ranking. For example, we wanted to make a lot of effort in our unity. So I'm really pleased with our squad's performance tonight. I'm sorry, we have no audio of the questions in the Zoom call. Well, it was great. I was just talking to our squad now. The emotional development has been key for us, at least for me. We knew that we weren't the worst team after our 3 losses back home. We had a lot of ties, and we had lost a few times, but we knew that first of all, we had quite a high opponent, and we are the away team, which is difficult, of course. But we are looking at this cup as work process. It's not just worth saying when we lose, when we draw, for example, where we tie. Also, when we win, it's worth mentioning that this is a whole process. We knew that we had a great game. We need to keep on working with a lot of humbleness, right? And it was important and significant the difference of goals. We know that there's just going to be 4 Mexican teams that are going to go into the quarterfinals. So we are not going to set the limits for ourselves from now. We have to prepare for Cincinnati. It's a travel. We have just 2 days. They're the second ones of their conference. We know that we are going against 3 very tough teams at the MLS, but we are trying to work really hard, but with a lot of humbleness as well. Your defense was great. We talked about the circuits, and Saha had a great performance today. But however, it wasn't enough, right? Yeah, I think that they were the strongest players that the squad has. It's not worth mentioning the career of Zaha. Of course, we know where he has played. We knew that a lot of our players were going to go looking for him. And Denzel, for example, played an excellent, an extraordinary match. He has been working really well, very humble. But of course, work of our players is never individual. Gile, for example, the flanks, for example, they were great. Diego, Rey, the same thing. They did a great job, and we did a great job in the collective way. We knew that the back areas were going to be moving. Gillis' coverage, for example, as not to lose the edge, the jumps of Mandry, for example. So I loved how our team, our squad shined today. We worked a lot on our organizational culture, so we have to go move forward. Your team played very well in the first half, but I think in the second half you did so. But however, you had a really clear victory. I'm sorry, we lost a bit of audio there. Well, we tried to be as self critical as possible, even when we win, because that emotional balance is very significant. As I said, we cannot believe that we are the best ones for having won 4-1. I don't share that opinion that the second half we did badly. Of course, the opponents were trying to look for the draw or the tie to go into penalties. So we knew that how good they were there. Yeah, I think they cornered us a bit, but I also believe that the team was able to change the switch a bit and understand that we had a lot of transitions in our favor. So we had to take advantage of those opportunities. And for me, that was a step forward for that. To play a dominant uh, match and of course to be able to place a correct strategy. The way we work, many times we try to be dominant, or we try to be at least, but we know that there are matches that need to have that transition. We were able to prove ourselves on those situations and having control in the second half. I never felt actually that there was a lack of control. There were situations with the opponent because they have an individual hierarchy, which is very important. And I acknowledge that Charlotte is a great team. They work very well. They have really great players on the MLS. They have a great level on an individual and a collective way as well. And their players are very direct. And of course, there are a few players that are not used to that. There's an impact on the wear of a lot of players that had cramps, for example, and they muscle sore. But we knew that we needed to play with our hearts in our hands. This team is used to do that. So I'm very proud of our players. Let's go to last two questions for the reporters on the Zoom call. Go ahead, Armando Isaiz. Hello, good evening, Martin. Good evening. On the last tournament, I was asking about those minutes where the team seem to lose. So what we saw today, many times we didn't even notice throughout the transitions that you had throughout the game, how that could be done. So how have you noticed a change from the team towards a more balanced 90 minutes of the match without looking at those fallbacks at the end minutes that we saw in previous matches? Charlotte FC was able to control the pressure at the beginning of the second half. Hello, good evening. Well, I think this is all part of the evolution of the team. We had a historical semester with a record of points, records of victory, the classification, a historic classification and ranking in the final phase. That was a really good semester, but we are not just resting on those success. We knew that we had a lot to correct. And at the end of last semester, one of the causes that we seemed to lose because we missed a few situations, the team lowered their performance, but that was normal. The part of where we need to continue working on that. This semester, we do have a roster that, as I was mentioning last week in conference and yesterday, we've added a bit more depth to our roster with more options to change, which allows us to have that opportunity. When we detect that the team is dropping in energy, which is, of course, normal, every team has that situation where the energy lowers or the opponent grows. We need Pisa, for example. We have Rai, we have Oscar, for example, to name the players that actually had the opportunity to play today. We have a lot of quality in our bench. And the key, as I told the players, is that they stay humble and precise. We know that there's a lot of circumstances where some of them will play the 90 minutes, some of them will play 10, 15. But if we manage to have all of our players aligned to the idea and the work philosophy, which I really like, we see performances such as today where at any level, we saw the level dropping. On the contrary, it actually grew. So we were able to tie back home with Tijuana, with Tigres, for example, and we weren't able to put pressure on them. We ended up losing. So we have a strong game back home. We a lot of lessons learned, and we need to keep focus to have the team grow a bit more. I may I ask a second question here? Orlando Castellan. Hello, good evening. Orlando Castellan, Informative Service at Sports. Are you more pleased for the great performance that your team had on the pitch, more than the just the goals than that you were able to score? Are you pleased with their performance? Well, it's difficult to separate both things. I think that the performance of the team was great. It was extraordinary. And that allowed us to have a good offensive. The team, perhaps in previous games, were able to score goals at the end of each match, but I'm really pleased with the team's performance because I see the work that they do every day for the squad. They all of the things that they need to sacrifice to allow us to continue growing and improving, traveling the distances. They have to be spend long times without their families. And I think that our family members being able to see us in these kinds of situations, that should make our players happy and feel proud about their work. We are facing a very humane team that has enough drive to continue doing what we need to do. And for me, that's key. Look at their ambition, look at their will to grow and continue to evolve. And that doesn't only go for the players, but also for the staff, so that we were able to see this version of the Bravos of Juarez's team. And of course, we're not going to be overwhelmed by our success, by this success. We need to continue working hard in a very humble way so that we can have a great match against Cincinnati up next. Thank you very much. Good evening.